Yeah, so I'll just talk about the fact that, I like this game. It's a fun game, but there are clear issues. I think there's a lot of potential this game could add, especially considering that there's not as much in the game as what I hoped or what CD Product Red said that they were going to put in the game, and then kind of had to change their mind after because they were getting close to the deadline of release of the game. That there was a lot of stuff that this game was promised to have in it, but then was taken out near very close to the last minute just because they didn't have the time to add that content to the game. So that's kind of frustrating. And then, I think the interactive world is not as interactive as what it can be for a game that's focused on RPG. And even when you pick your role as Nomad, Corp, or Street Kid, it impacts the game, but not as significantly as what you were really led to believe. So, like your life path, or your life role, or something like that, whether if you pick Nomad or Corporal or Street Kid, does affect the dialogue, but it doesn't really affect the game substantially. Like what you get based on your life path, that affects the dialogue, but it affects it for that moment. It doesn't there's no kind of consequence from your decision later on in the game, and whatever life path you pick affects the dialogue in that moment, and really only in that moment. So it affects the game, and it does impact the game, but really not as significantly as the developers and the media and how the game was advertised anyways. The game was advertised that, and depending on your life path would impact the game significantly, but not as significantly as the advertisements were. Yes, your life path does impact the game, and it does give you extra dialogue, but it only impacts that moment. And it doesn't kind of have a residual consequence later on in the game. And it really only affects that moment with your dialogue, depending on your life path, and only at that moment with that dialogue. So, overall, your life path does change things about the game, but very little about the game, and only in certain moments, and only within that moment. The fact that you can't change your character after the start of a new game and after a character customization, and the fact that you can't alter your character throughout the game or during the game is kind of a little frustrating. And I think that's kind of content that was supposed to be in the game, but was taken out because of the deadline of this game expecting to be released. So that was content that I believe they said were going to be in the game during their advertisements, advertisement of the game, that they took out, which is a shame, because it is kind of stupid how other games such as Grand Theft Auto, the Watch Dogs Legions, Watch Dogs 2, and games that kind of have that RPG element, give you options to kind of re-edit your character and customize your character throughout the game. So that's the feature that's not in this game that other games have that are kind of somewhat of an RPG, which is kind of weird to have a game where you can't really edit your character or customize your character throughout the game, and that you're really stuck really being able to have that option at the beginning of a new game, and then nothing after that. What else? Oh, and like I said, depending on the path that you pick as Street Kid, Corp, or Nomad, it affects dialogue. It gives you dialogue options, but it only affects you in that moment within that dialogue, and there's no kind of residual consequence later on in the game. And whenever you do get that extra dialogue, depending on your life path of a Nomad or Corp or Street Kid, that dialogue only affects that moment and only that moment of that situation you're in. The world is supposed to be interactive because it's the RPG. And even though it is interactive, it's not as interactive as what it could have been. A lot of times, NPCs are always in the same space, regardless of where you go or how long it was taking you to do things. Most likely, they're going to still be in the same spot, And then a lot of times they're not really as interactive with your character, except for somebody that's like a main art NPC within that story. And even then, it's very narrative of basically what kind of communication you can have with the NPCs that you can interact with. What else? Yeah, and then the thing too is I find there's other games that that are kind of like the same in the same genre as Cyberpunk 2077, such as like Grand Theft Auto, Skyrim, and so forth, and other games like that that have like a role-playing element to it. That actually, besides being able to edit your character throughout the game, and not only it being at the beginning of the game before, during character creation. And the fact is, like I was saying, Grand Theft Auto and other games that are RPG actually have, seem to have more content in it when it comes to the cars that you can have, when it comes to how you want to style your apartment, the fact you can buy multiple buildings and apartments, the fact that you can actually buy multiple clothes and store those clothes, the fact that you can edit your character and create your character and change your character throughout the game, and not being stuck to only be able to customize your character only at the beginning of the game and character customization, and then not being able to have that option later on throughout the game. That's something that they don't have, and a lot of games have the ability throughout the game to customize your character, to buy different apartments or to edit your apartments. What else? And to edit your cars, to buy different cars, to store different cars. And then some games I feel that are kind of like in an RPG genre have more customized, not besides customizability with your apartments, your characters throughout the game, and then your clothing. And I feel like a lot of the world is a little more interactive than this game. The game is interactive, but your interactive is very narrated to the fact that it's only with specific NPC characters, which are non-playable characters, that you interact with. Is kind of like in the main story arc. And you can interact with those characters, but like I said, it's very focused, so you just can't really have just a general conversation with just anybody on the street. And if it is, it's very, very plain, very limited, and kind of boring. What else? So, you do have a lot of freedom, you do have a lot of customizability with your character in this game and the things that you do. But there are other games, such as Grand Theft Auto 5, that just do it better than this game. Same thing with Elder Scrolls. Same thing with other RPG games. Just give you more flexibility when it comes to when you want to edit your character or edit your houses or your cars, how you can store these things, and just how more interactive you can be, besides with non-playable characters that aren't part of the main story arc. But overall, and besides those things, considering that they took out a lot of content because they were kind of in a position where they didn't really have the time to add these things into the game because they were getting closer to the release date that they delayed multiple times, that they didn't have the time to add all this content that they said that they were planning on adding into this game, which is a shame. I understand that they couldn't add it because they had a very limited amount of time, and unfortunately because of that limited amount of time, they couldn't add some of the things that they wanted to add into this game. And that's a shame. That's not really much they can do about that when you're limited on time, and there's only so much content you can fit it within a game, within that amount of time that you have. It's just other games have done that better when it comes to the kind of content you have available to you. And this game, I feel, kind of falls short on certain content, such as being able to edit your character throughout the game at any time, whether it's at your apartment, whether it's a bartender or a hairdresser in the game. And the fact that you can't do something that which most games have is to be able to edit your character throughout the game is kind of shows just for that example right there, how much content is lacking in this game. That they were planning on adding in, but they couldn't because their time was very limited, and unfortunately because of that time they couldn't add a lot of content that they wanted to, that they were not able to get into the game in time. And the fact, and like, well, I don't know if they were going to add multiplayer, if they were planning on it or if they weren't planning on it, but like even the fact, just thinking about GTA 5 with the multiplayer, and how you have like a story version of the game that you can focus on, or then like you can just go simply online and play the game and constantly be updated with quests and missions online, like Grand Theft Auto 5. So you can choose to just focus on playing the story and the side missions. But then if you want to go online, you can play strictly online. It's a shame that they didn't kind of implement that within CD Product 2077. I mean, with Cyberpunk 2027. 2077, because I think, and if Cyberpunk 2077 kind of did something similar to GTA 5, where they had like the option to play online and be updated with missions and quests and be able to interact with friends and to do things with them online, but then be able to play offline and then focus purely on the story mode, and have like those two kind of features, but we're at the same time kind of separate from one another. So you can choose when you wanted to focus on the story offline, or when you wanted to play online with updated quests and play them with friends. Is one thing I love about GTA 5, and I think, and if they had something like that within Cyberpunk, it would have made this game even better than what it is now. And considering the amount of content that they mentioned through the advertisements, even during the first delay, the second delay, and so forth, there was a lot of things that they say they wanted to get into this game that obviously are not that is not content within this game, because and they had a deadline and they had limited time, and unfortunately they weren't able to get that content that they said during the advertisement of the development of this game that they want to add in, and fell short on time to do so. So that's a shame. And then, like I said, the other thing is the bugs, the glitches, and the frame rate drops. Those have been very significant to the point where you can't be oblivious to it, and it's extremely apparent that there's a huge amount of glitches, bugs, and frame rate drops, and with the textures not loading and loading up within certain areas that you go to beforehand, before you go into that area. And just that extra content, which, and having the ability to play offline or online to do missions where you can focus solely on the story, or you can play online doing missions with friends, not being able to customize your character throughout the story, and only having that option at the beginning of the game and not anytime during the game when it comes to customizable character creation. And that's kind of like content that's missing, that I think, I could have made this game a lot better than what it is now, with the content and the condition that its performance condition that it's at right now. So, those are things. Those are things that were really frustrating about the game. Those are things that I don't like about the game. Is and the performance issues with the bugs, the glitches, and the frame rate drops. How apparent it is, noticeable it is throughout the game that when I'm playing it. The lack of content in the game that was announced during advertisements that they were going to have in the game, but when they were getting closer to the deadline, decided to pull that content from the game because they didn't have time to put it within the game because of the limited amount of time they had. Which was being able to actually edit and customize your character, your apartment, and your vehicles, and then that was stuff. A certain amount of things that didn't make it into the game that I think could have made this game a lot more enjoyable, and it kind of takes away from the enjoyment of the game besides the performance issues. So yeah, I would say the problem with this game is the performance issues, the glitches, the bugs, and frame rate drops, and textures not loading in beforehand when you look at certain objects or you're in different areas. The fact that you can add your character during the game, you can only do that at the beginning of the game with character customization, but you have no way to do that during the game throughout the time that you're playing it. Not being able to edit your character, your apartment, your cars, or not really be able to store any of these things. So yeah, or the fact that you can't play online with friends and it's offline and there's no online mode to do missions with your friends, and you can only play this game offline by yourself. Kind of takes away from that kind of feeling that it's an RPG, and that capability of kind of interacting, or the game feeling like it's very interactive. The fact that you can't play online with friends with updated missions so and that takes away from the feeling of it being an RPG and the capability of it being a very interactive world. The performance issues, the content that was in the game the content that's not in the game that was supposed to be in the game during advertisement, but that they couldn't get in the game because of their limited amount of time of preventing them from being able to put that content within the game. What else? But other than that, I like the game. Like, besides the lack of content and the performance issues, other than those two things and the things that are missing, I think it's not a bad game. I think it's a game that, yes, is extremely buggy, it's extremely glitchy, and the performance issue sucks and it's missing a lot of content. But hopefully they can get those patched up with an update sometime down the road, and at the end of December or sometime early January or February, and they can get those patches out and they can fix the game when it comes to the performance issues, and maybe slowly start gradually adding extra content to the game that would make this game feel more interactive, such as being able to play online with your friends, with updated missions, and having like an online mode, making maybe the characters and the environment more and more interactive with little things, little details. Being able to customize, having the ability throughout the game to customize your character, your apartment, or your cars, or ways to kind of store these things and have that seen and noticeable. Yeah, so those are things that I would like to see in the game. I think that would improve the game. And, as much as, it's a great thing that companies can patch their games after its release, I'm just tired, though, like I said in my other videos, that companies are abusing that now. Because before they didn't have that luxury to patch a game, they had to analyze it thoroughly, double check everything before they release the game. That way there would be barely any bugs or glitches or frame rate issues. Unfortunately, companies are kind of taking advantage of that, the fact that they can do that and patch it after the game's release. So I don't really like the fact that they're doing that, and they're taking advantage of it. But I do like the fact that if a game is broken, it can be fixed with patches. So I'm kind of on a fence about that. And I think there's a pro and con between, and having that capability of, fixing a game after release with patches if there's bugs, glitches, and frame rate issues. And I'm kind of on the fence about that because I think it's a good thing that games can be fixed. But I think it's a bad thing at the same time, because I think companies over the years, especially considering the pandemic and so forth, and just over the years gradually, the luxury of being able to do that is getting worse. And that's kind of why I'm on a fence, because it just feels like it's being more and more taken advantage of to have that luxury and the capability of patching a game after release when there's bugs, glitches, and frame rate issues. Where before, that luxury wasn't there, and they couldn't take advantage of it, and they really had to thoroughly look at their game before they really released it. But then the problem with that is if they didn't have that luxury, even if they did thoroughly go through the game before they released it to make sure there was no bugs and glitches, if they didn't have any of that luxury or that capability, you would be stuck with a broken game, and there would never be a way to fix it. So, and that's what I mean, there's a pro and con to it. Yes, the game can come out, it can be buggy, it can be glitchy, it can have frame rate issues, but thankfully with patches, after the game's release, it can be fixed. The problem with that, though, is, like I said, companies are taking greatly more and more over the years taking advantage of that, and that's the downside of it. And so that's what I mean, there's pros and cons. Yes, they can fix the game when it's released if there's glitches, bugs, and frame rate issues, and it can be fixed after the game is released with patches, but then at the same time it can make a company lazy and codependent on that luxury. So that's why I'm on the fence with the capability of being able to fix games with patches, and why I'm on the fence, because I think it's a good and bad thing. But then at the same time, without that, and if a person released the game and they didn't have that luxury or capability, if the game was broken, you would always be left with a broken game, and there would be no way to fix that game at all whatsoever if that luxury wasn't there to be able to patch the game after release if there is bugs, glitches, and frame rate issues. So on hand, it's almost like a saving grace, and at the same time, it's a bad thing because companies can become very codependent on that luxury or capability. Where if we didn't have something like that, if you did get a game that was broken or glitchy, bugs and frame rate issues, and if the companies didn't have that capability or luxury, you literally would be stuck with a broken game, and there would be no way to fix it if companies couldn't fix games after the game was released with patches. So and there's a good thing and there's a bad thing about that. So that's why I'm really on the fence about this thing, especially the fact that CD Projekt Red might possibly be facing lawsuits for misleading misleading the investors, because the investors felt misled. Even I think a lot of customers or consumers feel misled because the game kept the advertisement just kept advertisement kept hyping up the game. Constantly we're saying that during development, and this is the kind of content of the game that we want to release, and then constantly backtracking and then not adding that content within the game that they're advertising, and then constantly saying that the game is golden or the games should do well and it's running well, and there was just a lot of misinformation and a lot of kind of going back on that information when it came to the management, and when it, in an advertisement, and then kind of like announcing through that advertisement into their investors that and this is the kind of game that investors or consumers can expect, but then going back on that when it comes to content and just the performance overall of the game. So and it's a shame that happened. Of course it can be fixed, but and I don't think it's excusable to kind of mislead their investors or their consumers that much. Obviously, maybe it was time that played a significant issue on how they had to go back on the words that they were saying, or like the things that they say they want to add into the game, or its performance. Maybe time was an issue that made them have to constantly go back on knowing the things that they said they were going to put in the game, or its performance to either customers or investors. And unfortunately, I just feel like it was poor management, and then at the same time wasn't really on the company's side. And I really think if you give them enough time, and they can fix the game when it comes to its performance, and they can add that extra content that and they kind of announced during the beginning of development of this game. And other than those things that I've just mentioned, overall, if you take away the lack of content in the game, if you take away the performance issues, overall, for what it is, this game's not a bad game. I've enjoyed the game. I think it's a fun game. I like the game. I think it's a good game. I think this game has potential. But I think, and the reason why this game has potential is because the performance issues can be fixed with patches, even though I don't like the fact that companies are trying to take more advantage of that more gradually or greatly over the years. But it can be fixed, and that's one thing. And down the road, besides fix the game with patches, and because they have access to the game, then sending out those patches worldwide throughout the internet. And besides the patches fixing the performance issues, and I think they can eventually add additional content to the game, whether it's an online mode, that kind of focuses on being more interactive with your friends and being able to play the game with your friends with updated missions, or just in general adding just more content, whether it's being able to customize your characters throughout the game and not only being able to do that at the beginning of the game. And despite the fact that these things can be corrected through patches and extra content through the internet, or being sent out through the internet to anybody that owns the game, despite that, this is not a bad game. It's not a horrible game. The potential's there, and without the extra content that would make this game better, or the performance issues and if that wasn't the issue with this game, and overall this game is not a bad game. It's a fun game. It's enjoyable. If you take away the lack of content, if you take away the performance issues, the potential's there, and it's a game that I do enjoy, and I do see the potential.
What now? Come on! Getting tired of this.
I'll make sure you get off easy. You're seriously making me look for you? Come on.
Man, this transmitter takes me back.
How so?
Back in 2020, we used them for pirate broadcasts. You know, blasting hardcore punk on bad free.
Am I going crazy?
Man, this transmitter takes me back.
How so?
Back in 2020, we used them for pirate broadcasts. You know, blasting hardcore punk on badge frequencies and whatnot.
So this must be how Raff and Shiv hacked those drones.
Was beginning to think you'd never figure it out.
You're just wasting your time!
You and I are gonna have fun when I find you.
What are you, 5? Get out here!
Done that shit? Yeah, just about.
Run this little shit! Oh yeah!
Fuck! He's decommitting us! Quit whining it!
Whoa!
Huh? What now?
You're ruining the fun. Come out, you sissy.
like this.
Game on!
Let's settle this like grown-up.
Come on, ain't got all day. Then pop your head out. Go.
Ain't nothing to be shy about! What are you, 5? Get Ain't nothing to be shy about! What are you, 5? Get out here! I didn't... Ain't nothing to be shy about!
Nice work on that antenna. The tricky part of having a head is knowing how to use it, but not for you, V. Mosquito's boots are safe and secure. The contract is closed, and closed well.
Get him!
what? I don't know. Go! Get out of here!
Be your friend. Come on out. We could be friends. Can't hide. You know that. Come on out. We can be friends. Ah! And here I thought this day had been done.
Wakey, gentlemen.
What's happening? Security!
Too far away to hear us. Well, let's not do anything rash here. We just tune and sell. We don't scroll. Honest to God.
XBD of a preacher's little boy. Murdered. Ring any bells?
Which preacher?
just got a fresh batch with boys. No clue who their daddies are. Need more.
Bryce Stone, circuit rider on News 54. Son was Bobby Stone, 12 years old when he died.
Are we talking black, white, Chicano? Any identifying marks? Style of execution?
Papa? I think I know the one he wants. BD 9430.
Kindly hand it the fuck over. Now.
All right, please, just relax.
Just take it.
Freddy! Sir, it's just behind us on the shelf.
BD 9430.
That's the one. Just take it.
Papa! Why? Why did you have to kill him? I'll do anything. Please just let me live.
Great work, B. Let's hope it helps trace the motherfucker who scrolled the thing. Gig's closed.
Hey, watch.
Alright, there's only two other things that I'm going to say that I wish they had in the game that they don't have for content. One, the fact that I hate that when I craft the blade and I want to make a character nothing but a blade character, and be able to throw my... And it's cool that you get a perk that you can throw your knives, but the thing is, if you want to make a blade character that uses nothing but blades and no guns, the only thing you have for a ranged blade attack is throw knife. But the fact that you can't get it back from the body that you've taken down with throwing a knife, or there's no way to automatically craft knives without the blueprint, or finding the blueprint, is annoying. Because that means whenever you actually want to focus on making a character that specifically is nothing but blades, where you can attack in a close combat with the blade or throw a knife, yes, you can throw a knife. But when it hits an enemy, no matter what, even if it hits the enemy or if it hits the ground or the wall, you lose that knife you threw. And since you don't seem to have a common blueprint to craft a knife, you're always going to be stuck buying knives. And that's pretty much, I don't know how accessible that is in the game. It would have been a lot more simplistic that if they're going to give you the option to throw the knife and you want to make a knife character, the fact that there's no way to craft a common knife to throw after you throw the one that you have that you've lost from throwing it, regardless if you hit any object or the enemy, you know, and you're not going to really be able to, you know, make a character that's specifically focused just on blades. And the fact that, you know, and the fact that you can't like craft the common knife or find blueprints to craft like epic, legendary, or uncommon knives, basically if you don't buy a sufficient amount of knives or find a sufficient amount of knives, at some point you're always going to run out of knives. So even with that perk of being able to throw your knife, the fact that you lose that knife regardless of what you hit after you've thrown it makes the whole perk of being able to throw your knife stupid, because you're not going to be proficient as somebody that just wants to be a character that uses blades. And the only option that you do have, if you just want to make a character that only focuses on bladed weapons, the fact that you only have one thing that you can use as a ranged attack with the bladed weapon is throwing knife. And the fact that you lose that knife when you throw it regardless of what it hits, and there's no way to have right off the bat to craft the common knife or find a blueprint that lets you craft, you know, an epic, legendary, or uncommon knives, you're going to be very improficient as a blade character when it comes to range. And that's kind of annoying because I wanted to make this character as a range focused knife character, as well as close combat. And the fact that, you know, when I want to make this character a bladed focused character, the fact that if I give him the perk to throw the knife, and regardless of what it hits, I lose that knife, it makes me very inefficient as a ranged bladed character. Because yes, even though I can throw a knife at somebody and take them down, The fact that once this thrown, regardless of whatever I hit, whether if it's the enemy that I threw the knife at or in any other object, the fact that I lose that knife and I can't pick it back up pretty much means that I'm going to have to craft a knife. The fact that you don't start off with the beginning knowledge to craft a common knife, and there doesn't seem any blueprints anywhere with the weapon dealers to buy something better than a common blueprint for a knife, you are not going to be able to actually be proficient as a bladed character for range and close combat, because there's really no way to always have to guarantee that you have a knife that on hand that you can throw at somebody. And the fact that they don't have any shades of brown hair is kind of frustrating, and that they only have really shades of black and blonde, and then red, blue, purple, green, and all those other multicolors, but yet they don't have a shade of any different shades of brown hair. So I can make a character that kind of signifies me or represents me because I have brown hair. And with what the game has now, it's not a bad game despite the lack of content and the performance issues. You know, and despite not having that lack of content and the performance issues, it's still a fun game. I still enjoy the game, but it would have been nice to actually see some more content in the game and that the game performs smoothly without the performance issues. But you know, and like if you take away the lack of content, you take away the performance issues, for what the game is, it's a fun game. It's not a bad game. It's just there's a lot of potential in this game that they can add through updates. But I just feel like there's a good amount of content missing, and the performance issues have been very apparent and significant. But if you take away the lack of content, you take away the performance issues, it's a fun game. It's not a bad game. It's a good game. But this game has a lot more potential, and there's a lot of content that can be added to this game. And if you fix the performance issues, this game could be a lot better than what it is. Even though it could be better than what it is, for what it has, though, it's not a bad game. If you took away the performance issues, and it could be even a better game if you actually added more content to really refine and define the game. Yeah, so, and that's kind of what I mean. You know, you're not going to be proficient as a ranged bladed character because at some point, considering that you cannot craft a common knife and you can't find a weapons dealer that can give you blueprints on crafting better rarity of knives, at some point you're going to run out of knives. And you know, that kind of is annoying, and I don't understand exactly for that reason why they have that perk of being able to throw your knife. When you do throw it, you lose the knife regardless of what you hit or what object you hit. So I don't understand why they gave you that perk to throw your knife. And maybe yes, you can buy knives from the weapon vendors or merchants, but at the same time, like, the thing is, you know, and once you throw that knife, you lose the knife, and you're gonna have to have a constant supply of knives on you. And the fact that you cannot craft your own knife when it comes to common, or find a blueprint of better rarity of a knife to craft, you know, and at some point you're guaranteed to run out of knives. And the fact that you're gonna have to go into your menu to always equip the knife because you can't pick up the one from an enemy that you brought down or killed from throwing a knife. You know, you're always going to have to go into your menu and constantly equip knives every time you throw one, which is just going to be a frustrating, a pain in the butt to be able to actually have to do that every time you decide to throw a knife at somebody, because you can't pick it back up but if you down the enemy of whoever you're throwing that knife at. So those are the things why I don't understand they have the perk. And I understand why they got the perk, is because you can still use knives in close quarters combat, but if you wanted to make a character that focuses nothing, like I said, on knives for ranged and close combat, even though you have the perk that allows you to throw your knife, it just really feels like it's a useless perk though, with all the perks for relating to knives, because when you do throw your knife, you lose your knife. It doesn't matter if you hit an object of a wall or if you hit a person that you're trying to kill with throwing the knife. Regardless of what you hit with throwing the knife, you lose the knife. And considering that you don't start off the game with having knowledge of crafting a common knife, and no weapons merchant seems to have any blueprints on crafting a common knife or anything with a better rarity, you're going to be in a situation where not only you're going to have to keep equipping a knife through the inventory menu every time you decide to throw a knife, but you're always going to have to keep buying a knife from weapon merchants consistently, because you have no ability to craft your own. Besides having to go through the menu every single time that you want to throw a knife from losing it, from throwing it at somebody, when it comes to you wanting to focus on being proficient at close quarters combat and range bladed weapons.
waves in Tokyo, Sydney, and Paris, their next stop is on your doorstep. Night City, expect the unexpected.
God damn it! God damn it! Go fuck him!
received. Textbook example of a job well done, don't you think? A++. Contract closed.
You know what? You're fucked, asshole!
AV, got this client. Not the brightest bulb in the bunch. Got himself into some serious trouble, needs to leave town ASAP. More intel attached.